don't be surprised that you're filtering through hundreds.
I did actually, okay, before that, I did have one that I wanted to, because I think it applies to the general topic of the stream, and Ace in particular. Going back to the original question from, like, the Discord from 2 months ago, so, I don't think, in this stream at least, you have addressed it as much as you could. What in Two Blue Vortex do you find that you like about the series? Because this whole time we've basically only been bashing it. I do want to talk about the good stuff, too.
Oh, I was going to say...
I thought we started that.
Yeah, I was going to say, but you also were having audio issues with that, so you didn't hear some of that, so I got that.
I did,
no,
yeah, you're right.
That's why.
So, yeah.
And if I was having the audio issues, the stream also was having the audio issues at that time, so...
So some of the parts that I liked about it, I love stories that are based in the same universe, but are different than the original story that we got. I referenced Percy Jackson earlier because I'm a huge Percy Jackson fan. Percy Jackson touches on the Greek, Roman, Egyptian, Norse gods in different book series. And while some of those characters sometimes interact, generally they don't, all of it is still by the same rules that are set in that universe, and the stories are equally compelling, and they're told brilliantly. My all-time favorite series to read. There's never a time that I will not read a Percy Jackson or Rick Riordan book in the Percy Jackson
Bro,
universe.
it's so good. One of my favorite series all time too.
Like, all of them have their own flavor, and they're all amazingly well done. So with that, I love how Naruto has Shippuden. I love how Boruto, skipping that its name is Naruto Next Generations, has Two Blue Vortex, because I like that parallel. I like the time skip. So I like the parallels, which are kind of nostalgic callbacks. There was a 3-year time skip in both that they had for different reasons. One is with Naruto leaving the village because he needs to find his friend. The other one's with Boruto leaving the village where his friend is at that he needs to convince to do the right thing and fix things. I like that kind of juxtaposition. I like this is almost kind of like a different way to see the Sasuke side of the story, for lack of a better word, of kind of how he went, but in a different way. And I also like the different ways that Boruto is showing growing up than from Naruto, because Naruto had the struggle. Naruto wasn't popular. Naruto didn't have friends. I like that in Boruto, it's starting out from somebody who looks to be a kid with a silver spoon in his mouth. He's basically the boss's kid. He has whatever he wants at any time. He has the nicest clothes. He's popular. He's a prodigy. He's skilled and great at everything. He's the kid that has everything, but isn't happy with it. And in the beginning, he looks like a brat because he just wants his dad. And I like how Boruto has grown from that kid in the beginning that we first see that's mad his dad is too busy to be at his own daughter's birthday party, to the guy that's willing to walk away from everything to learn to be the best ninja he can be, to come back to try to save not only his father and mother and the village and now the world, but as he clarifies that he told Takashi and Koji in this last chapter, he's willing to do all those things as long as the plan doesn't mean killing Kawaki, because he still views Kawaki as his brother, the same way that Naruto never at any time saw that taking out Sasuke was an option. In his mind, that just bringing his friend back was the way it was going to go, because that was his brother. For Boruto, he's going to save Kawaki, and not doing it isn't even an option. Now, what it means he has to do that, he'll figure that out. But at the end of the day, he's not going to kill Kawaki to get what he wants, which the old Boruto, the young Boruto, the naive Boruto, wouldn't have minded to take the shortcut to get what he wants from something. So I like those different topics. I kind of like seeing the older generation of Naruto people not be the center of the story as much. Of course, Naruto is, because he was the protagonist, but I like seeing Boruto's story of how he steps into that place. And I love the way that he showcases his abilities and learns at a rapid pace, which is similar to how Naruto learned, as he was a prodigy in a different way, which I like the feeling of that in the way it has those callbacks, but it doesn't hold too much onto nostalgia and the past. It tries to be its own story and continue forward in that way, which is what I love probably the most about it. Because if it was just Naruto 2.0, I wouldn't have probably made it past a couple of chapters.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I like that as an answer. I will say that's a little bit of an umbrella thing, which applies to both Part 1 of Boruto and Two Blue Vortex. If you can talk on the specifics of Two Blue Vortex, I'd be really interested, because we agree that Part 1 of Boruto is just phenomenal. And even Two Blue Vortex, we like it because of franchise, not because of the story necessarily. I don't think Ikimoto's story, if it's in a different franchise, would be good or anything, but not that they're
we
totally
gotta
bad.
check out Cosmos or whatever it's called and see.
All right.
Yeah.
I can definitely
So
give you more
specifically-
Two Blue Vortex specific. So what I like about
Specifically,
this is,
like if there's any like moments or scenes or chapters or characters or conflicts or themes or goals or anything like that.
yeah. So
Anything
for
to
one,
point to.
I love the way how the story started and the design of the characters. I thought the new design brought things more into less of a nostalgic Naruto past and more into a Boruto futuristic scape, because they have a more modernized design, aka zippers everywhere. But whatever, I'll take it. It looks cool. I can't wear it, but it
belts,
looks
too.
belts and zippers all over the place.
But just don't tell Daigo Knight about the belts.
I love some of the initial conflicts. I love that off the bat, Sarada is unabashedly one to say that Boruto isn't the enemy. But I also love how, while she can continually say that, nobody, including Kawaki, is ever checking her about it. But you have to imagine she's done this for 3 years at this point, and it continues on, which we found more about that as they explain some of those things. I love how some things about omnipotence will seem to be explained as some of the characters seem to learn more about it, including her learning more about her own ability herself, because I don't think she fully understood it when she used it. She thought she did, but seems to also have surprises for her. I love how Miski, while he's around Kawaki, understands that it doesn't feel right. Like, Boruto is his son, and around Boruto, even when he knows that Boruto is supposed to be the enemy in his head, the feeling of Boruto being the person he needs to be near is right, compared to being around Kawaki, where it's kind of a hot and cold thing. Yeah, Kawaki's cool, I'm supposed to be here, this is the job. Around Boruto is where he feels like he needs to be, which is also an interesting way to have him try to fight through that, of how things seem to be affecting him and whether or not he can overcome omnipotence. Shikamaru being brilliant enough with his high intelligence to know and constantly understand that some shit isn't right and constantly figure it out, but have to the point that he's done it so much that it eventually overrides what he's figured out and it just fades away. But he's so brilliant that he keeps understanding things are different. Amado, being equally brilliant, understands that something is wrong because the things that should be don't match what he has. So clearly something is wrong in this situation. I even like that Code showed up, that after 3 years of chasing Boruto, finally decided, if I just attack the village, Boruto's going to show up. And when Boruto shows up, then I can get him to come to me. And that works out. I love some of the fights and the way they pulled out. I love the Shinju and the way that they are seeming to evolve as a life form and asking kind of integral questions from a philosophical angle that most new powerful life forms ask. Probably the most recent one I can compare it to is Miriam from Hunter x Hunter. Asks almost the same questions in almost the exact same order, because that's just process of learning to know who you are and what you are and what you want.
Real quick, the Shinju, in my opinion, actually heavily parallel the Royal Guard in Meruem in even more ways than that. There's a lot with each one so far. Anyway,
I definitely can see that. I like the most recent reveal about Kashin Koji. I don't even mind his Shinju ability popping out when he was about to die, because that's shown in anime in one. When you're about to die is when you're at your most powerful, because something is going to come out to save you if you're a good guy, generally. Unless you're Yamcha, because Yamcha just never really got it together. What's another good thing that I liked about it? I liked a lot of the show and not tell that they were doing through the first few chapters. The pacing was really well placed. You heard things like Uzuhiko, but didn't have any idea what the fuck that meant. And even the couple ideas of what it seemed to allude to just seemed to be groundbreaking. Like you can use the planetary power of the Earth. What do you mean? What? Explain all of this. In which then we finally got to points where you get a little bit of exposition. but then the pacing picked right back up with more things getting into the mix and a lot of action versus reaction moments, which I think is a good way to open things up to then have to bring it back and have to then build back up into trying to resolve all the things that got put out there. So bunch of dominoes get put in place, and then you got to figure out how to knock down each of those dominoes in order. So I don't think that so far it's been keeping my interest in the way that it's opening things up. So I'm excited to see if there's going to actually be more of that moving forward, or if things are going to take a step back and kind of revert more into the Kishimoto style.
Interesting. Okay. I think Kishimoto's style is a little bit more grounded. But so I do like that as an answer. That's very, very good. I want to go even further with that. I think a lot of that would probably be closer to Kishimoto's outline, which is like the concept of the story beats, instead of the execution of the story. I am curious if there is anything in particular that you thought was executed on, regardless of the plot point itself. I can give an example. I really loved the choreography between Himawari and Jura. I thought the paneling there was excellent, as well as I loved the pacing of Sasuke one by one, meticulously just stripping down Konoha's power force. Basically, he starts by taking out Sarada, then fireballs that one Jonin, and then takes out Konohamaru through the Chidori, and he electrocutes Sumire, and all that's within the course of like 2 pages. I love how he's doing that one by one in different and unique ways to show how overwhelmingly powerful he is. And then the Shinju, that's again like a concept that's probably like on like Kishimoto's outline, but I love the way they were first presented.
I don't think it is, bro. I'm gonna be honest. I don't think Kishimoto's outline has the Shinju.
Well, okay, but I'm talking about like conceptually, anyways. Regardless if it's there or not, like it would hypothetically be there. But regardless of him writing down introduce Shinju, I think the actual introduction of the Shinju was a lot better than what it could have been. It was like maximum potential because it's presenting them in a way that's like otherworldly. It's showing the difference in power there in a way that you can only do through presentation. And that's not like a Jura personality thing. That's just all 4 of the Shinju and like the warped, almost turning sense that you get in your stomach by watching that scene. It feels otherworldly, which I love. So those are some examples that I would list.
I would say probably the 2 things that I like executed the most was Boruto's entrance when he stepped on Code's face. That was cool. Instantly gave me that one idea that 1, Boruto is completely in control of the situation. 2, he was able to appear upon Code when he couldn't react. And 3, was so disrespectful to Code that he didn't view him as a threat. All in the moment of one panel that looked amazing. I would say another moment that I probably thought was executed really well was Boruto and Mitsuki meeting back again, and how Boruto, even though Mitsuki seems to be coming at him intensely, Boruto never again seemed to be, throughout this whole panel, he never seemed to be flustered until chapter 12, where he seemed to get caught off guard. He seemed prepared for everything that he was coming up against and able to handle it fairly well without breaking much of a sweat, and didn't view, not that Mitsuki couldn't be a threat, but that Mitsuki wasn't a threat that he wasn't unprepared to handle and handle well. As in somebody who was as well thought out and as skilled as Boruto should be after learning from Sasuke, who is a tactical person, as we all said here, and we all have agreed upon before. It would make no sense that Boruto wouldn't have a plan for dealing with each obstacle he knows he should deal with, which would start off immediately with Mitsuki, Kawaki, Code as the top 3, but also how to deal with Shikamaru, who's somebody he's apparently had conversations with before, and how to handle that conversation and explain things out. But I'd be shocked if he didn't have a plan for almost everything except the Shinju were the one thing he didn't really have a good, solid plan about. And I feel like that's the next thing on his list of how to deal with all of them equally, as I think his only real issue is trying to deal with multiple of them at once. So I think that the execution of Boruto in action and his train of thought, for lack of a better word, and his actions behind that have made, to me, perfect sense and have been a very a very good way to showcase his abilities in a short amount of time compared to taking the full story to show how much he can actually do. Though I am curious to know what his limits really are, such as what the limits of Uzuhiko are, why he can't use his karma seal, all the things that have been brought up about Naruto so far. So for me, the key moments that I've liked that they've shown have been around Boruto as the center of the story and how he interacts with other characters, either showcasing how much more powerful he believes he are than them, how capable he is compared to the situation, or how he reacts to threats in different situations.
Yeah. I like all that. That's really interesting. I do think, in general, Two Blue Vortex, something I do like is it's doing larger-than-life concepts, some really big ideas that, regardless of the execution, even in concept alone, they're new and they're compelling and cool and interesting. I mean, look at everything Two Blue Vortex has done. It introduced Uzuhiko with the planet's chakra. Again, regardless of how that turned out, it's something that got us talking. So many different ideas and theories, positive memories there. You have the Shinju, everything that goes into that. The mystery of the Ten Tails, where did it go? All the people caught in the tree, that answers where Sasuke's been in the first couple chapters. Everyone was wondering that. You have omnipotence, once again, touched on at the very least, and it's interesting the new rules they brought up and ways around it, such as Shikamaru working with Boruto. You have, obviously, the Soul Thorns. Who knows what they're going to do with that? It's a new concept entirely. They could have just gone with Chakra Fruit. They're doing something new. I love how they're not being lazy there. They're introducing new elements. We have Kurama's return. How did he return? I'm interested there. As well as the fact that Kurama seems to be the most natural affinitized of all the Jinchuriki. So she's just naturally better than all of them. And who knows where her potential is going to go. And we've already seen where her potential's gone to some extent. I think that's interesting, as well as more things of the relationship between Himawari and Kurama. And Kurama's existence itself. Who knows where that's going to go. Maybe Kurama is resistant to omnipotence, and maybe Kurama's going to talk with Kawaki, considering Kurama talked with Kawaki in the Ishiki arc. Maybe they're going to have a part 2 to that conversation now that he knows that Naruto's been sealed away. That's interesting as well. We have Kashin Koji's new ability, the fact that he's working with Boruto as well, the fact that he's even back at all. We didn't even know if he was alive, we just assumed he was. But the fact he's actually in the action and playing a significant role, the antithesis to the Shinju, and playing with the whole destiny thing. I love that. Amado, that it's not necessarily anything new, but they're continuing the mysteries with him. So I love the fact that they're doing that, all the interesting routes they're going there. Code, wherever he's going in his future, working with the Shinju, that's interesting as well to me. What he may do with the Claw Grimes, who are also evolving. That's a new thing Two Blue Vortex was introducing. So I'm curious what they're going to go with that. There's a lot of things Two Blue Vortex is setting up, or mysteries, or things to talk about that I really love that they're doing. Or just ideas in general, even scenes, regardless of the execution, that I love. When you compare to, like, Two Blue Vortex, or even Shippuden, like, Ao as a villain in Scientific Ninja Tech, that's either not new, or not big, or interesting, or larger than life. I'm not even going to say it's grounded, like some of Naruto's emotional moments in Boruto. Even the Mujina Bandits arc, as objectively good as it is, with the Tento story, and the fact that he's serving as a foil to Boruto, even that's where people usually say, like, the worst part of Boruto, where people drop off, it's the least interesting, etc., etc. Not because it's not larger than life, or the fact that it's grounded, or whatever. Just the fact that there isn't much discussion there to be had. They're not doing or introducing new or big elements that are worth discussing, regardless of execution. But yeah. Kamui, you want to say good things about Boruto now?
Well, I was trying to think. I mean, I hate to say it, but while I'm like one of those people that just like is interested in every little thing, but if I was to like think about things I want to make videos on, all like 85 that I've started, most of them are actually still part 1 things, honestly. Or at least they started in part 1 and they've just been a continuation in part 2. Now, obviously, some of my biggest thing,
Jura? Who is he? Stuff like that. Yeah, it's just two blue vortex only. But a lot of the other shit I was like on my mind, honestly, it does stem from part 1. But my favorite thing in two blue vortex anyway is it's chapter. Before I say that, Ace, what is your favorite chapter of two blue vortex? And or what do you think was the best written chapter of two blue vortex?
And why?
Because my answer for the best thing is really like the whole chapter. It's really the second half. It's really like the whole chapter that I'm going to explain. So,
All right, I'd probably say that my personal favorite chapter I liked was chapter 7. And I liked the writing for that also because the exposition explained some things and also gave credence to Miski holding himself back. Also, seeing Sumire and Sarada in that love triangle with Boruto was just cute to me. Those type of things, I always find those hilarious. So I would say that's probably my personal favorite chapter, though I probably think the best chapter so far was likely, probably say it's somewhere of a toss-up between 12 and 11. I really can't
Hold up.
For me?
So you agree there is a difference between favorite and best. That'd be subjective and objective.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what? We're moving on. I'm not questioning that further. Because I should accept this. Okay. So what about chapter 7 in particular?
Why do you think chapter 11 or 12 is the best?
I think because it's really showing, I believe, the Kurama Himawari reveal and then the subsequent fight and rescue. I thought all of that was quite interesting. I thought that the worst part of that whole sequence with Jura was him leaving. That's the only part that I thought seemed odd. The rest of it seemed great up until that point and highly intense. And then the way that it ends just seems what's the right word for
anticlimactic?
Very subpar, very anticlimactic of how it's built up to that point. Because of the initial fight, Kurama Himawari being able to attempt to be on Jura's level even temporarily is an impressive and massive feat. But as a perfect Jinchuriki, that makes a lot of sense of what she can do or is possible. Boruto stepping in to save his sister, who seems to somewhat understand that something's different about Boruto from Kawaki. All of that I loved. It's that ending part just kind of, it was more of a combination of the two, but then the 13th chapter, while it gave me a lot of great things, I didn't like that one part, which seemed to take away from the impact of the 11th and 12th chapter, because it didn't feel like Jura really was after killing anybody at that point. If he would leave what would have been arguably the biggest threat to the Shinju, who seemed to all be under him and his guys that he would protect, to that situation, and not destroy the one person that could do it without something more tangible than divine intervention being the reason he's choosing to leave, which seems weird unless he calls himself a god now and decided it was his choice, whatever. But that was the part that threw.
Yeah, that's the divine intervention myself.
Right, that's the part that probably gave me the biggest disconnect of all of it, because it didn't make sense to me. And even looking back, I couldn't find ways to make it make sense. So it's something I just have to hope gets clarified moving forward. So that's one of the part that I put on hold. But I would say writing-wise, I loved everything about Chapter 13 and how it was explained and the why, even showing the difference of Boruto current day to 2 years ago when he met Kashin Koji. Kashin Koji's train of thought of how things worked out and how he was using Boruto as a way to test if what he thinks he saw is accurate, or even if his ability is what his ability is, or likely if he's just insane and lost his mind. But using that conversation to confirm things and details as he's explaining it to Boruto also, thought was a good touch. And also I like the idea of the Shinju coming back together, and the idea of the tree, and that all of them are named by Jura, which is an interesting thing, because when you name something, you get attached to it. So I don't know if there's something more to that, such as if he names them and they're like the first thing he sees, they imprint on him. I don't know.
There's
Well,
a
that's
lot
interesting
actually with the naming
because-
thing, but
Yeah. I don't even want to get into that because we would just spend the rest of stream on that. But it plays into Jura's character of he's giving them identity, but then he's telling them to go find identity, which is a contradiction.
Yeah, I know.
But
He
that's Jura's
even
character.
really quickly. He even acknowledges that he already has an identity in this chapter, despite being the one to tell him how to find it. But that's all good there.
Yeah. So okay, it's interesting that you mentioned chapter 13 with that because this is a perfect example of I don't like things that are spoon-fed to me. So people saying that it's like hater comments. Yeah, get out of here. Because Boruto being in the land of wind, telling us that is even going too far. I'm not going to say it's bad. Like it's perfectly fine, but the fact that the the shinobi after him were in sand outfits, and then we have the Shinki Shinju. That's all you need. That makes sense. That's perfectly fine the way it is. You can come to your own conclusion. You don't even need to see how it came about. You already technically can put the dots together yourself. You don't need that information. Naruto's very good at not telling you what a character is feeling, but rather just showing you, or having you resonate with it yourself, just through relatability or whatever reason. So you don't need everything explained, especially when it comes down to feelings. And this is just one of those things that I think they did very well. But when it comes to things that don't make sense, that's when we have the problem. But chapter 13 is interesting. You mentioned chapter 7 was your favorite. I was hoping you could elaborate a little bit more on that.
My
Alright.
favorite because of the Boruto and Mitsuki interactions. So that was why
Okay,
it became.
fair enough.
That's why it was my favorite because I also enjoyed their interactions and how it seems that Mitsuki, like most of the characters, is trying to understand what's his purpose, what's the reason that he's here, because it doesn't feel right that he's here for Kawaki, and that's accurate. Substituting Kawaki for Boruto is a completely different flavor, and honestly, it seems to have even kind of turned Mitsuki a bit more malicious, for lack of a better word. Like, Mitsuki would never generally just sneak Boruto, even if there's a big fight coming out, but he knocked Kawaki out to go run and fight Boruto. And it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like if this is your
Hilarious.
boy, you'd be like, let's go jump him together then, if anything. But you're like, cool, you know he's over there. You said he's over there. Cool. Knocked out, and I'm going to run off on your own. Which, also, I find Kawaki getting knocked out repeatedly fucking hilarious. I don't know why. It's a petty part of me, but seeing Kawaki that seems to not know how to really fight anymore, just get knocked out so much, is
That's
just...
funny.
It brings joy to my dark soul just to see him get slapped around and be like, that must hurt. That looked like it hurt a lot, bro. You just knocked out for no reason. You're supposed to be all this bad, and you just keep getting these hands put on you, or feet in the case of Jura.
Yeah, we'll point that out, but unlike everyone else, that's not a critique of us. If anything, we just, like you, we find it funny.
Oh yeah,
If anything, it's a good thing in that regard.
It's funny, and it's actually honestly a good thing, like just narratively anyway. But
Well, I do think there's a reason for why that is funny to think that he is, through omnipotence, he's just attacking Boruto in order to go attack Kawaki. But I think the real reason there is he's protecting Boruto, considering Kawaki would want to kill him from his perspective.
there's more to it than that. It's also to essentially almost confirm things, because Mitsuki kind of wants to see, like, I think Mitsuki wants to interact with
Boruto.
the Boruto / what he thinks is Kawaki for himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that, but what I'm really getting at is Mitsuki would want to protect Boruto from doing something reckless or stupid that would get him killed. For example, let's just say that, like, Boruto, right after fighting and losing to Deepa, he wanted immediately to go confront him again. I can imagine Mitsuki knocking Boruto out before he goes and does something stupid to get himself killed.
Yeah.
Even if he's there in the Ishiki arc, it's possible Mitsuki being selfish would have prevented Boruto from going to fight Ishiki in the village.
Yeah.
So, that's what I'm getting at there. I guess I'll give my favorite chapter now, unless we had more to go in this regard.
Oh no, I'm here to hear it.
Okay, cool. So my favorite chapter is going to be chapter 8, the chapter following what you're talking about, because in this chapter, we get technically the conclusion to the Boruto Mitsuki fight, but I don't really care as much about that. It's cool or whatever, but what I'm interested in, the part that I love, is the love of conversation between Mitsuki and Ada. I think that's been the best part of Two Blue Vortex so far. It's the most compelling, most interesting, most thematically relevant, in my opinion. It's the best for the characters. It was the best scene, in my opinion, of Two Blue Vortex so far. I just love that conversation. And that's funny because a lot of other people, again, being the antithesis of me to the community, a lot of other people hate that nonsense, is what they would consider it. Like, they think the Mitsuki stuff has been the weakest stuff of Two Blue Vortex so far. Nah.
I would fully agree with you. That is, sadly, that was in chapter 8, which isn't as cool as the immediate part of when they first meet each other in that intensity. But I also agree that was one of my favorite parts of Two Blue Vortex, because it gave deep insight into both their characters almost instantly in the span of a few pages, and gave me everything I needed for both of them to know where they are. That was it.
If we're going, another one of my favorites is going to be the Hidari fight, chapter 11, just because I liked the fight. Like, it was just a cool fight from beginning to end of chapter. There's a lot of nonsense in that chapter, but I liked the fight itself.
I mean, it was a good one. Plus, I mean, I just thought about something. Are the fucking feet of the Ten Tails of Hidari goddamn hands?
Oh, Hidari's hand feet, bro.
Hand feet.
It's weird,
I
bro.
just realized that. That makes a lot more sense. Okay.
That's
But,
hilarious.
I mean, even for his move, it looks cool that on the front of it, he's in his stance in what looks to be their black leather outfits, which I always find hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would say that was definitely another good one. Quality
Okay, so those are my best and favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And the Kamui, your best and favorite now? Or favorite and best, if you want to go in that order?
Okay, so best is easier for me. I think the best chapter is chapter 4, pretty solidly. Of all the, so with every chapter, there's always been something I could pick out that I was like, just kept it from just being straight up perfect. But I think chapter 4 has by far the least. It's literally one small thing, and it's how you go from chapter 2, Kawaki being like, "Atsuski, eh? I hate it when people call me that." And then when Sarada calls him it, he's just like, "That's right, I'm an Atsuski. I killed them too. You know, that's me." He just does this 180. That's the only thing. Other than that, that chapter was just great. It's tense.
Yeah.
The Shinju awakening scene, it's very like good. It's intense. We're learning stuff. We're like code, like what is going on? Who are these people? Then they're all mysterious. You've got that little panel of Hidari from the side view. It's, who is this guy? Why is Boruto acting this way? It's the first time you get to see Boruto kind of break a little bit. He loses his cool demeanor. He's acting out of emotion. You can feel the desperation on his part.
Yeah.
He's not listening to Kashin Koji. It's very, very tense. And then the end of the chapter is thematically one of the best things Two Blue Vortex has done, in my opinion, because you have both Kashin Koji and Sasuke, two of the best what it means to be a ninja characters throughout part 1, and you have Kashin Koji basically paraphrase the thesis statement of Naruto, what it means to be a ninja, in his own words, with the whole, like, you know, it doesn't matter, we still must fight thing. And then you have the Sasuke tree in the background, Boruto be like, "Hey, I'm sorry, you gotta wait a little bit longer, Sasuke." You get that reveal. I think that was just by far the most well-executed chapter. Favorite, though, is tricky, because there's a lot of parts of chapters that I really like. For example, in chapter 5, I absolutely love Sasamato. And part of me wants to pick that chapter, because that's actually another contender for best chapter for me, because honestly, I don't really have complaints with that chapter on its own. In fact, that might be the only chapter I don't have any complaints about, chapter 5, if it's taken by itself. And then, so I'm gonna have to pick that one. But I think thematically their chapter's better. But Amato's sussiness, awesome. Mitsuki versus Boruto, I liked the fight. I liked the Mitsuki characterization in that fight. Chapter 8 I like as well, the one that Oodie talked about. The only thing with that one, and this is a me thing, I loved it, One thing that bothers me is the whole anime part where the anime already did it, and I couldn't help but notice it. So that always bothered me.
Yeah.
So I might.
I'm ignoring the bad and only looking at the good for this.
Yeah, so-
Because again, like the Hidari fight, it's the most enjoyable chapter to me, but it's probably one of the chapters that has the most nonsense in it as well. So.
Yeah, so that's where it's tricky. But I really liked the Mitsuki narrative mask angle that's in chapter 7. So rather than the conclusion, the resolution of it, it's more like the in the moment where you can just tell Mitsuki is bothered and he's like denying, he's lying to himself. And I do like that aspect in that one. The Hidari fight's really freaking cool. It's the coolest fight. Mitsuki versus Boruto is my second favorite, but Hidari's fight's the coolest, I think, with the claw mark Chidori stuff that he does. It's just really cool. But I'm not gonna say it's my favorite chapter because the Himawari quote unquote rage as she's got this calm and can be demeanor for several panels definitely ticked me off. Favorite chapter's tough. I think it's a toss up for me between chapter 8 also is another one where I don't really have actual flaws. Because that chapter's it's a toss up between chapters 4, 5, 7, and 8, which I realize is not one chapter, but it's gonna be one of those 4 that I would pick for my best and favorite. Okay, so chapter 7 is bogged down by omnipotence nonsense, so I'm gonna rule that one out. So it's chapters 4, 5, and 8.
I think just for variance, since Ace chose 7, I chose 8, I think you should choose 4 or 5. And I think you made the most compelling, convincing argument for 4, so much so to the point that I almost want to choose it, but I'm gonna stick with my 8. I can't put that above the love conversation.
Yeah. I just see the 5 is okay. I think chapter 4 probably is the best and my favorite because the thing is the other ones are kind of carried by one thing. No, granted, 8 I think it's just a good consistent chapter. Good conversation with Ada. Good stuff with Jura Invasion. It's tense. You know, it's engaging. Chapter 5, it's just the first half's really not anything. It's just carried by. Oh wait, no. Chapter 5's the one with the Sasuke flashback. That's not my pick because I thought they could have done so much more with it. So that was just carried by Amanda. So yeah, I'll say chapter 4, my best and favorite.
Is it fair to judge a chapter based on wasted potential rather than potential?
Yes, given when I'm comparing it to chapter 4, where I feel like it just did its potential.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, but to be with chapter 5, that potential had to have existed in the first place to have been wasted. So I think at least it deserves props for that.
It does, no, and I like chapter 5. It's tough because I am the most indecisive person in this whole wide world. But here's the other thing. If I'm looking at it in retrospect, though, the thing that got me so interested about chapter 5 with Amato, it hasn't gotten ruined, but it has me worried it's ruined by the Shikamaru omnipotence nonsense that doesn't make any sense, inconsistencies, which is why I ruled out chapter 7 anyway. So I have to go with 4 and 8.
Sounds like.
I think 4 and 8 are the best 2 chapters. Maybe every 4th chapter will be some of the best.
That means that 12 would have been great, which means you got to wait till 16 now.
Yeah, for the next good chapter.
Look, by the end of the year,
okay, I think I'm gonna go with chapter 4. Interesting though. I want us to pick our least favorite and objective worst chapters.
I think that's obvious though. Everyone's gonna choose chapter 2 for both.
Well, chapter 2 didn't aggravate me as much as other ones though. So that's what's tricky. I think chapter 2 is objectively the worst, but it didn't make me as mad about it.
Okay, if we're going that, then chapter probably 10 or 11 would be the most frustrating or aggravating for me.
The Himawari rates. Or maybe, I don't know, Jura leaving.
Even the conversations we've had about Kurama's revival is some of the most heated we've ever gotten on stream. So it's ridiculous nonsense.
Yeah. Those might be our least favorites, but I think chapter 2 is just objectively the worst.
Yeah.
I didn't mind
but Ace,
chapter
what do you
2
think?
as much because that was just Boruto and Code having their "I'm here" moment. If I had to pick a chapter that I didn't like the most,
Their talk before their fight when chapter 1
Well, yeah,
ended.
the problem with
Yeah.
chapter
Setting
2
up the
is
fight.
Vortex saying, "I'll say this one more time," like 5 different
20 times. Yeah.
Like he should have said, "I'll say it 3 more times," Code, and then worked his way down.
But again, I did present a possibility to make that good in retrospect. That being, Koji's ability might have shown him that each time he asks was a chance that he could have said yes.
Yeah. So that's where it's like they can retroactively save it, kind of. But
Still
in which
annoying
case,
to
then I
watch.
guess that's reason not to pick that chapter.
I'd probably say if I had to pick, I'd probably go with chapter 6 just because of how all that goes into an exposition about what happens with Sasuke and his fate, what he did during the time skip, the talk. I mean, it's cool, but it feels sandwiched in between 2 fairly intense moments of everything going on, which I feel like that's...
Yeah.
It's not filler per se, but I feel like it was... I need something to take up some time while I go ahead and plot the rest of this out in a couple of next chapters so that way it all fits together.
I just remembered something because you said the word conversation. Chapter 5 also has the Shinju conversation, which I thought was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The target one.
Okay. I think it's very good as well. Especially Hidari choosing his target. I love that moment. And then, with Bug as well. Both those are phenomenal. Even Matsuri, how she can feel the anguish and
Jura's
hatred.
contradictory nature. Like, that conversation's just good for all 4 Shinju.
Yeah. Chapter 5 is low-key underrated. It's pretty good.
Yeah. I was going to say, even honestly, I just went back and looked at chapter 11 and the conversation of how the fight went with Hidari. I thought a lot of that came through really well, of him understanding that his Chidori thing, he didn't even know what it was called, but realizing that what she was talking about was the Chidori. Also understanding that without the Sharingan, he probably can't really use it right, and kind of getting that all together and realizing that in the moment. And then figuring out a way to get to his target, which, why the fuck she would stand over claw marks is beyond me, but...
You know what?
You probably
You're
don't want to
reminding
get
me
me
of
and
these
Kamui
chapters.
started on that.
Yeah, you remind me of these chapters. Chapter 10 was definitely my least favorite chapter because that's the one where, like you said, some of the heated stuff with Karama and the whole, we'll just accept the circumstances, so they're probably not going to explain it thing. And then the wasted potential and the Enogene thing that we discussed that we did not like. We thought they could have done so much more. So yeah, that's my pick for least favorite.
Maybe even worst moment of all of Two Blue Vortex.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I think my worst moment are the sensory